to the Thought Snob Podcast. I'm Paula Swope. Let's get snobby. This is the first commentary episode I've done up until now. I've had guests, and if you've been watching and listening, thank you. I greatly appreciate you because you're giving me your most important asset, and that's your time. I value time. I don't waste it. I don't waste my time or anyone else's, and that's why I have a big old script that I prepared for you today so that I don't ramble. And I also don't talk just to hear myself speak. When I talk, there's a reason. And if you listen to me today, what I'm about to tell you will change your life if you allow it to. You need to listen closely if your life is falling completely apart or you just flat out aren't getting what you want. And maybe not getting what you want is your norm. It's something you've just grown accustomed to. Now, I want to take this a bit further. My target audience includes anyone who grew up in a toxic environment, anyone who was bullied, those of you who hide extraordinary talents because someone somewhere said, you can't do that. Now, my work resonates with those who feel trapped in jobs they hate, who have known more heartbreak than love, and who are struggling financially. If you've cut ties with family or friends, you are not alone. If this sounds like your story, then you're not just a listener. You're part of a community. And even if we've never met, I know you because your struggles have been my struggles. So I really want you to understand this. If you want something, you're meant to have it. That's why you want it. So don't turn your back on those wants just because someone has led you to believe that those wants are unattainable for you. When you want something very badly, do you know that's your intuition speaking to you? That's one of the ways your intuition speaks to you. Why do you think everyone wants something different? Just think about that for a moment. I wanted to write a book that would change the self-empowerment space forever. But I know people who have zero desires to do anything like that. Then I know people who are artists, and they are driven by that need and that desire to create beautiful paintings and sculptures and all sorts of art. I don't have any desire to do that. I mean, I wasn't given that type of talent. So the things we want, we're meant to have. Don't ignore any burning desires you have. Today, I want you to make a commitment to figuring out what you really want because I designed a playbook to help you obtain those things that you want so badly. And that's the topic of today's podcast. And I'll introduce you to that playbook in just a moment. The first 3 decades of my life, I was heavily influenced by small-minded thinkers. Those people didn't have what they wanted, and they were fearful of anyone else getting what they wanted. So many of my comments that I would make about wanting a lavish lifestyle and a loving, faithful husband were shot down with statements like, well, people in hell want ice water, but that don't mean they get it. Or I was told I was getting above my raising. I was also led to believe that God blesses some people, but not others. And I just happened to be one of the people that God hadn't blessed. Now, I believed that about myself when I was younger. And that belief alone, man, was like a real buzzkill because I would think, well, why bother if my fate is sealed? There's nothing I can do about that. Don't allow ignorance and jealousy to stand in the way of what your intuition tells you. If you want something, you're meant to have it. I cannot stress that enough. So before I get into the nitty-gritty of teaching you the biggest life hack ever, I would love for us to do a little grounding meditation together. Now, I designed this meditation so you can do it with your eyes open or closed, because I know some of you may be driving right now. And if you aren't driving and you're in a place where you feel comfortable closing your eyes, then do that now. If not, just follow along with me, okay? So let's start by taking a few deeper than normal breaths. And what I want you to do is breathe through your diaphragm, not your chest. When you inhale through your nose, breathe through your belly. Like it should come out into your hands like a balloon. And then when you exhale through your mouth, your belly should come back in. So let's do this together. Inhale deeply through your nose. Hold at the top. And breathe out forcefully through your mouth. Let's do 2 more rounds of this breathing and I'll guide you through it. Inhale deeply through your nose. Hold at the top. And breathe out forcefully through your mouth. And again. Inhale through your nose. Hold at the top. Breathe out forcefully through your mouth. Let's do 1 more round of this deep breathing. But I want you to do something a little different. Think about something that's bothering you. Maybe it's a work-related stressor, or maybe you're experiencing a relationship issue. Whatever it is. Choose a specific problem to focus on, and I'll give you just a moment to zone in on that issue. Now imagine this issue as a cloud of dark smoke that's trapped inside your body. You may even have a vision of where it's positioned in your body. Inhale deeply through your nose. Hold it at the top just like you did before. But when you blow out through your mouth, imagine you're blowing out that problem like a cloud of dark smoke. Okay? Like use your mind's eye to see the dark smoke leave your body. I'll guide you through this. Inhale deeply through your nose. Hold at the top. And blow out forcefully through your mouth and see that dark smoke leaving your body. Now you can return to your normal breath and just stay with your breath for a moment. Breathe normally. Relax your jaw. Allow your shoulders to drop. And simply rest in being. And just know that in this relaxed state, you are more open to receiving divine wisdom. So we'll conclude this meditation with some self-reflection. I want you to ask yourself this question. What do I want? Just repeat that silently to yourself. What do I really want? Repeat this question silently to yourself a few times as you just breathe normally. What do I want? Now, if the answer comes immediately, great. If it doesn't, that's okay. It will eventually. Just keep asking yourself that question. All right. So now that we're relaxed, let's get back to our podcast episode here. And I want to explain one thing about what you just did. A meditation like that turns up your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest system. Unfortunately, this is the system that doesn't get turned up enough because the whole freaking world stays on overdrive. And daily stressors turn up the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight, flight, freeze response. And when the sympathetic nervous system stays on, inflammation accumulates in the physiology. And if it isn't released and interrupted, that inflammation eventually turns into disease. Personally, I'm convinced that people who are aware of this and make an effort to keep their parasympathetic nervous systems turned on daily, I'm convinced they live longer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. Okay, back to business here. So my debut book is a unique take on self-empowerment, and it launched on August 12th, yesterday. And the title of the book is Snob, The Modern Spiritual Playbook for a Better Life. And I've got it right here. Now, this is not your typical self-help book, okay? It reads more like an entertaining novel. And I blended science and storytelling into this light-hearted hybrid model. Now, there's another reason why my book is unlike any other book that I know of in the self-empowerment space. I didn't pick the content. You did. Now, when I decided to become an author, I did many things to prepare for that. And one of those things was building a strong online presence. Now, that was in 2021. And I had around, I think, 2,000 to 3,000 followers across all platforms. And today, I have way over 250,000. And through my interactions with my followers, I gathered qualitative data in the form of comments, questions, feedback, and personal stories that people shared with me. And those data guided and shaped the content of this book. I analyzed thousands of comments so that I could come up with solutions to the problems that you struggle with the most. What I found out was my target audience has been cheated on, treated like shit by people they cared about. They're struggling financially, and they're surrounded by people who want to cultivate misery. They want to keep the misery alive. Furthermore, I learned that many of you have tried to consciously create the life that you want, but you haven't been successful. And those efforts caused more frustration than relief, so maybe you've given up and just settled for what has always been. And many people express to me that they feel or felt unlucky and doomed. But I know why these people were not successful in attracting what they so desperately wanted. It's their belief systems. And they are completely unaware that those beliefs are blocking them from everything that's good. I wrote this book because I figured all this out. And I know what it takes to get to a point where everything you touch turns to platinum. And I want you to know that you weren't put on this earth to struggle. You were born with something that can be used to greatly enhance your life, but you might not know what that is. And my book teaches you how to unlock that hidden gift so you can stop the madness and start the miracles. Miracles are absolutely possible. They are. But you must create them. Now, that's where most people mess up. They sit around and wait for God to bring about a miracle, and it never happens. And the reason it never happens is because you have to take action, and God gave you everything you need to do that, but you probably don't know what to do. That's what I am here for, okay? Now, during the first 3 decades of my life, I experienced more heartbreak than love, and that is not what God intended for me, and it is not what God intended for you or anybody. When I was in my late 20s, I seriously said, I can't take this anymore. I cannot take this anymore. This can't be all there is for me. And at that time, I was seriously living a life that just wasn't worth living. I was stuck under the same roof with my mother in this tiny house in a rundown subdivision. Both of us were completely traumatized from her divorce from my father, and neither one of us had enough sense to know that we were traumatized. We fought all the time. Every single day was a screaming match about something, and whatever it was usually circled back around to money. It was just a miserable existence for both of us. And when your home life is miserable, you're basically fucked, okay? Because your home should be your happiest place in the world, because home is where your mindset is built and cultivated. Being miserable day in and day out is dangerous, because misery is a low-vibe, dark energy that attaches to other miserable people, places, experiences, and things at a rapid-fire pace. So my misery was highly transparent in every aspect of my life, from relationships to family to work to finances to health, everything, all of it. But I escaped. And I escaped without any resources or support from anyone, because I learned, thanks to Dr. Wayne Dyer, God rest your soul, I learned that I had everything I needed to get myself out of that quicksand. I had my mind. That's all I needed. And that's all you need. I figured out how to live the best life possible. And I can teach you how, regardless of your current circumstances or your past circumstances. Now, this next statement I'm about to make is coming from a place of unswayable confidence. I am 1,000% sure that I can teach you how to greatly enhance your life to the point that you get whatever you want, as long as you're willing to let me. If you're willing to let me show you the way, then your willingness means that you believe you can have whatever you want, and that willingness and belief is all you need. You might be thinking this sounds too good to be true. Let me tell you, it is not. It takes a tremendous amount of work, due diligence, and the strength to make tough decisions. But it's all worth it. You'll never regret doing this type of work. And when I was in the thick of my evolution, people called me crazy, and I was harshly judged and criticized. I ignored their ignorance because I knew I was on to something miraculous. I knew it. Right now, as I sit here, there is no comparison to what my life looks like now and what those people's lives look like today. The people who called me crazy and made fun of me behind my back are either ridden with sickness, living paycheck to paycheck, in abusive relationships, living a lie, or working in jobs they hate. And some of them, unfortunately, can check every single one of those boxes. It's quite sad. When someone tells you over and over again that you can't have what you want, you believe it. And those beliefs, unless they are interrupted, have the power to destroy your life. This book takes you on a journey of self-assessment, self-reflection, and self-empowerment, but it's not a quick fix. It's a playbook to a better life. And if you emulate my spiritual teachings, your life won't look the same 1 year from now. I want you to know that if you want something, you're meant to have it. That burning desire that you've always had is there for a reason. Your intuition tells you that you are supposed to do whatever you want to do, and that's why the burning desire never goes away. You may have shut it out a time or two in your lifetime, but it always comes back. Together, we're going to bring that burning desire to life. You can attract whatever you want, regardless of your past and present circumstances. When we're done with your spiritual transformation, those who have treated you badly will wish they hadn't. Miracles aren't reserved for the saints. We sinners are just as entitled to miracles, so let's go get yours. Now, if I can escape poverty, you can too. And when I use the word poverty, I'm referring to not having enough of anything. This goes beyond money. My definition of poverty is no money, no love, no support, no emotional intelligence, no self-esteem, no confidence, no knowledge about your power. Now, I can keep going, but I think you get the picture. Just know, I was raised to believe that I had no power and no control over my life. And I'll get into that a bit more here shortly. So when I realized that I was very powerful even way more powerful than the people who had created my slobby mindset. My God, I saw how wonderful that life really is. And as cheesy as that may sound to you, it's true. My whole world changed, and it changed for the better. It really, really, really did. And anyone who knows me personally knows that I am telling the absolute truth. My book, Thought Snob, The Modern Spiritual Playbook for a Better Life, is a 182-page instructional manual about how to move out of havoc and into happiness. So let's talk about where Thought Snob came from. SNOB is actually an acronym that stands for See New Objective Beliefs. And that's just really a more sophisticated way of saying stop paying any attention to the opinions and beliefs of others. Look at the facts and nothing else, okay? I want to tell you something I wish I had understood when I was younger. And before I get into this, I want to make it abundantly clear that I am not a brain expert. I have a very basic understanding of brain science. I can barely pronounce the parts of the brain correctly. So please know that even though I'm about to teach you something you may not know about the brain, doesn't mean that I'm acting like an expert here. So our brains contain a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. And the amygdala is part of the default mode network, and it's responsible for negativity bias. It's a major processing center for emotions. It links emotions to many other brain abilities such as memories, learning, and your five senses. It's part of a larger network called the limbic system. And I'm embarrassed to tell you, I knew very little about my anatomy until I started studying under Deepak Chopra at the Chopra Center. And that's ridiculous because so much of our socialization is tied to how we take in and process information. And it has a lot to do with our brain. Rick Hanson is a psychologist and happiness researcher. And he explained that the amygdala is primed to find the negative. This part of the brain uses 2/3 of its neuronal power to search for bad news. Once the amygdala finds the negative, the fight, flight, freeze response is triggered, and the adverse event immediately becomes a memory. Isn't that something? So when I first learned about how all of this worked, I thought, well, this is absolute bullshit, because I realized at that point that we're wired for negative emotions, and this is due to what is called evolutionary psychology. We inherited negativity bias from our caveman ancestors, okay? It's natural to pay more attention to negative emotions than positive emotions. So the good news is the brain can be trained to feel emotions that serve us well. That's what I teach you to do in my book. Rick Hanson's research shows that with practice, the brain can be intentionally trained to improve our outlook and attitude, creating an emotionally brighter experience. When I started my personal empowerment journey in my late 20s, this was what I was doing, but I didn't realize it. I had been so conditioned to jump to the worst case scenario, and I totally reversed that way of thinking. By doing that, I increased my emotional intelligence, cleaned out the trash that lived rent-free in my subconscious mind, and I raised my energy to a frequency that matched abundance and perfect health, which was the absolute opposite of what had always been in my life. Just a bit ago, I mentioned that I had a slobby mindset. And yes, I'm saying slobby. S-L-O-B-B-Y. And in my book, I refer to my transformation as going from a thought slob to a thought snob. And that's a perfect way to describe it. I said earlier that SNOB stands for See New Objective Beliefs, okay? So SLOB is also an acronym, and SLOB stands for Self-Loathing Overrides Better. Now, when I sat down to write this book right here, I took a trip to my past, and using my mind's eye, I embodied my younger self. And I spent some time with my younger self, and it was actually very sad. I remember the first image I had of young Paula, and it was of my tear-stained face. And I cried a lot back then. And the crying started way early on in my childhood. In kindergarten and first grade, I cried very publicly in the classroom. And then as I got older, I took my tear-stained face to the bars. And one memory that kept surfacing when I took a trip into young Paula's world was crying myself to sleep. And I remember being in bars, just dangerously drunk, and I looked forward to going home and crying myself to sleep. It was my favorite thing to do for many years following my parents' divorce. As I thought about everything that went on with me from birth up until my late 20s, one word popped up: slob. A slob, when used as a noun, is defined as a person who is lazy and has low standards of cleanliness. And when the word slob kept coming to mind, I was puzzled by it because my mind immediately went to personal hygiene, and I've always been very self-aware in that aspect and have never neglected my personal hygiene. I mean, people make fun of me because I take like 2 and 3 baths a day, okay? But I hadn't thought about brain hygiene, and that's when the light bulb went off. I had been a slob because I had allowed my brain to become corroded with filth. I allowed any thought to enter my mind and believed it as the absolute truth. I had allowed abusive people to infiltrate my precious energy space, and by allowing them access to me, I treated my mind like a landfill. I behaved like an insane person because I continued to associate with abusive people, expecting them to just one day respect me and treat me with kindness. Now, had I known then what I know now, I would have never behaved that way because I didn't respect myself. I didn't treat myself with kindness. Therefore, it was impossible for anyone else to do that. It all starts with us. It all starts with you. And when we use our God-given free will to make decisions that rip us to shreds, we practice self-loathing, and better goes to the wayside. With me, it was on a subconscious level. I did not realize what I was doing, and maybe you don't either. That's why I wrote Thought Snob. You must bring the unconscious and the subconscious to the conscious mind. And the first step in doing that is to become aware of why your life is the way it is. You have 2 choices in this lifetime. 2. At any given moment, you can choose to hate yourself, aka self-loathing, or you can choose better. Better decisions, better thoughts, better people, better places, better things, better. But I was taught to believe that wanting better than what I had meant that I was a stuck-up snob. Growing up, if I mentioned eating something different than, the greasy fried comfort food we always had, well, I was a snob who thought I was better than everyone else. If I mentioned traveling, I thought I was better than everybody. If I spent more time on my personal appearance than someone thought I should, well, I was a stuck-up snob. And I remember being told that my nose was so far up in the air that it was surprising that I hadn't drowned in the rain. How freaking dumb is that? It's just stupid. And anyone who knows me, and even people who barely know me, would never describe me as a snob in the context that the word snob has been used historically. I don't judge people based on their material assets. I don't associate with people based on their material assets. I judge people based on how they treat me. And if someone treats me disrespectfully, well, I want nothing to do with them. They can drive as far away from me as they can get in their Maserati, and I'll take the respectful person who's driving the Pinto any day of the week. Don't give a shit what you've got. It's all about how you treat me and how you treat yourself and how you treat other people. I've never thought I was better than anyone, but I am better than anything that remotely resembles disempowerment. It's just a fact. Now, before my brain was fully developed, all of my subconscious beliefs were rooted in fear, and they were based on the subjective opinions of others. Now, that's just a sophisticated way of saying that my beliefs are based on a bunch of bullshit. And by the age of 5, I had major insecurities. I suffered from debilitating anxiety, and no one ever tried to figure out what was wrong. No one ever even used the word anxiety. So I was clueless, and it took years to figure all this out. Here's what happened to me. Why would someone as young as 5 feel inferior? I remember being so intimidated by my peers. I felt like they were all better than me, and I was painfully self-conscious. And I felt this way for decades. And it wasn't until Dr. Wayne Dyer came into my life that I finally put the pieces together. And I realized I had inherited way more from my family and ancestors than high cheekbones and brown eyes. I had also inherited their trauma. If I hadn't caught this, I would have conformed and settled for never getting what I wanted, because I come from a long line of women who never got what they wanted. I have family members who despise me for the decisions I've made. I don't care. I do not care. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm the person who broke the vicious cycle of poverty in my family. And remember how I define poverty. It's not about just money. It's not having enough of anything. It goes way beyond money. And my father was raised in cruel poverty, like, the kind of poverty that people rarely escape. And Dad beat poverty, but he only beat it monetarily speaking. And he's one of the most determined people I've ever known. I mean, his determination is quite impressive, and that's one of the great qualities I did inherit from him was determination. And his determination made him a millionaire against all odds because he refused to live in poverty. But here's the kicker. He never escaped the mindset that accompanies poverty socialization. Even though he's done well financially, he still lives in poverty because every decision he makes is ego-based and rooted in fear. And that doesn't leave much wiggle room for peace and love. Now, I was taught to believe that money was the root of all evil, and that's just absolutely not true. Don't buy into that. That's absolutely not true. Money brings a level of absolutely glorious freedom, but when you rely on it for your happiness, self-esteem, self-worth, confidence, and power, you're not in the driver's seat. Your ego is. And when you walk into a room and your confidence rides on, let's say, how much your watch is worth, you may as well pay for swimming lessons to learn how to swim in quicksand, because the moment you come into contact with someone who has a more expensive watch than you, your confidence will crumble, and it'll take your self-worth with it. That's called living in fear, which attracts people, places, and things you don't want. It's also called being rich, and being rich should never be your goal. Wealth. That's the goal. Wealth. In my book, I teach you to view the world and your place in it from a totally different perspective. Part of that perspective is for you to see the difference between rich and wealthy. If your confidence can be shattered by something materialistic, you're controlled by riches. Rich people can be broken. Wealthy people cannot be broken. Wealthy people have it all. They have all of the ingredients for living a dream life, and those ingredients are strong emotional intelligence, excellent health. The parasympathetic nervous system is turned on more than the sympathetic nervous system. Wealthy people are mindfully aware. They let go of things easily. They don't get offended easily because they don't care about what other people do or say. They practice forgiveness, gratitude, and empathy. It's their mode of operation. And they know they aren't their thoughts. And they are very snobby about the things they allow to enter into their minds. Now, all of these ingredients mixed together and blended nicely into a cool, smooth, tasty drink equate to an energy frequency that matches with abundance. And if you don't understand that, you will after you read this book. And I also want you to know, and this might throw you for a loop, but I swear it's the truth. Wealthy people don't work as hard for their money as other people do because they naturally attract it. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. Wealthy people work, but they do what they love to do. So even if they work around the clock, it doesn't feel like work. Nobody's controlling their time. They're doing what feeds their soul and capitalizing on it while helping other people. That's the true meaning of living your life purpose, and that's what I teach you to do in Thought Snob. If you think you're meant to be broke, unhappy, and treated like a maggot in a bag of garbage, you've been terribly misled by the subjective opinions of others. I want you to do something for me right now. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer it honestly. Do you believe that God blesses some people more than others? Have you ever made comments like, well, God must hate me, or God doesn't like me, or God's punishing me for something? If you have, we need to get something straight. God does not play favorites, period. Before my enlightenment, I viewed wealthy people as separate from me because I hadn't been blessed like they had. That's how I viewed them. I even used to tell people that I had been put on this earth to be tormented. I can't believe I ever said that, but I did, and I said it a lot. When you hate yourself enough to say something like that, you'll get tormented because you're using your God-given free will to destroy your life. God gave you everything you need to create the life you want. You have free will to choose self-loathing or better at any given moment in time. So think about what you're choosing on the daily, because those choices have cumulative effects. I love to people watch. And so I just want to point something out here. People who appear to have everything, they know all of this, and they use their free will to their advantage. These are the lucky ones, okay? These are the ones that you see and possibly roll your eyes to the back of your head because their lives seem so picture perfect. It's these people who seem to have everything fall in their laps effortlessly. Well, let me tell you something. Things do fall in their laps effortlessly, but I guarantee you that they have worked relentlessly to level up to get to that energetic frequency of abundance, and anybody can do it. But it ain't easy. It is not easy, especially if you were brainwashed to believe that what you desire most is unattainable for you. We're all from the same source. No one is blessed more than another. The blessings come from free will. We are infinite choice makers, and each decision we make has an outcome. If we choose to associate closely with people who upset us, we're making a decision to lower our energy to a frequency that attracts more upset. This is why people who stick around toxic people, places, and things experience so many health and financial issues. I know you know someone like that. I know you do. Maybe that's been you at one point in time. Those things are the opposite of that abundant frequency, and it's impossible to attract wealth when your energy space is infiltrated by infidelity, disrespect, poor health, sadness, chaos, and anything else that makes you feel horrible. Feeling horrible for extended periods of time is dangerous. I'm telling you, it's dangerous. If I hadn't broken the cycle, something irreversible would have happened to me. And it makes me sick to think about that. I can't stress this enough. It makes me nauseous when I see someone unaware of how life really works. And they're in danger of living a life that isn't worth living. And usually they're also concealing a talent because of fear. If you have a talent and a burning desire to share with the world, Don't you dare conform and settle for standing behind a cash register. That is not where you belong. Now, standing behind a cash register is like my big metaphor for working in any job you hate. Employers will get rid of you in a minute. So don't sacrifice your health, your happiness, your life, and your time for anything or anyone that doesn't value you. We're given talents and burning desires for a reason. It's called our life purpose, and you must figure out what that is. My mother is a textbook example of someone who was brainwashed by her upbringing, which I refer to as downbringing in my book. My mother was taught to believe that there was one way to make money, and that one way was dedicating her entire life to an employer. That woman was a hamster on a wheel from the time she was 18 until I stepped in and balanced the books after she suffered a catastrophic health event in December 2017. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. In December 2017, on Christmas Eve, it wasn't Santa Claus that stormed our house. It was the paramedics. Mom was visiting for Christmas, and leading up to that holiday season, she'd been working excessive hours, like 10-hour days, 7 days per week. It was just ridiculous. And keeping that job was all she cared about because she thought that employer had more control over her life than she did. She lived in fear of losing that job, and she worried about it constantly. She talked about it constantly. Well, guess what? She got what she focused on. She got exactly what she focused on. So the night I called 911 on Christmas Eve, December 2017, she was in congestive heart failure and didn't know it. She hadn't been to the doctor since she had me. And I was born in 1976, by the way. So she had no real medical history. And, there's no telling how long she'd been in congestive heart failure because she hadn't felt well for years, and she concealed it. So she landed in the ER that night, and 2 days later we found out that her aortic valve was completely shut. And she'd been a walking dead woman for God knows how long. And her cardiologist told us that she would survive about 2 weeks without open heart surgery. On December 28th, she had open heart surgery, which led to a hard 6-month recovery. I mean, her body was so weak and worn out that she had to have extensive rehabilitation and medical care to bounce back. All that time she spent working. This is why I'm telling you this story. All that time she spent working. In the end, she had nothing to show for it. She lived paycheck to paycheck and sacrificed all of her time and energy to make someone else wealthy. And when her health failed her, well, where do you think that employer was? That employer was nowhere to be found. But ultimately, the catastrophic health event was needed because it gave Mom her life back. I mean, what appeared to be a total disaster, a miracle came out of it. I'm dead serious. It also gave me an opportunity to really test how good I was with conscious creation. And everything that happened, the whole chain of events, was evidential proof of how strong my abilities were to attract whatever I wanted. I just want you to know that Mom never worked another day after that near-fatal Christmas Eve night, and now she's living her best life. I've never seen her happier. When someone tells you over and over again that you can't have what you want, you believe it. And those beliefs, unless they are interrupted, have the power to destroy your life. This book takes you on a journey of self-assessment, self-reflection, and self-empowerment, but it's not a quick fix. It's a playbook to a better life. And if you emulate my spiritual teachings, your life won't look the same 1 year from now. I want you to know that if you want something, you're meant to have it. That burning desire that you've always had is there for a reason. Your intuition tells you that you are supposed to do whatever you want to do, and that's why the burning desire never goes away. You may have shut it out a time or two in your lifetime, but it always comes back. Together, we're going to bring that burning desire to life. You can attract whatever you want, regardless of your past and present circumstances. When we're done with your spiritual transformation, those who have treated you badly will wish they hadn't. Miracles aren't reserved for the saints. We sinners are just as entitled to miracles, so let's go get yours. Now, everyone's situations are different. You may love your employer. I wanted to tell this story about Mom to demonstrate what happens when you live your life by chance instead of living it on purpose. She created her greatest fear, which was losing her job, a job that took her time, and she still couldn't buy what she wanted to buy. That is not how life should be, and living that way makes no sense. But think about this. What if Mom had spent her time focusing on what she wanted, and all she wanted was to have enough money to where she didn't have to pinch pennies. She could buy what she wanted to wear, buy what she wanted to eat, make her mortgage payment. It's not too much to ask. If she would have just focused on that, who knows what would have happened. You should be able to take the kind of vacation you want to take without worrying about how much money it cost. You deserve the freedom to purchase the kind of food you want to eat and the kind of clothes you want to wear. You should never conform to waking up to some jolting, loud noise that stimulates your sympathetic nervous system and has you in fight, flight, freeze before you even open your eyes. I hate a freaking alarm clock. I use the terms Satan and alarm clock interchangeably, just so you know. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm not discounting the struggles that men go through, but hormonally speaking, we kind of got the shaft. Like, women got the shaft. When I foolishly allowed someone to own my time in exchange for pennies, there were mornings when that freaking alarm clock would go off, and I'd have to drag myself out of bed because I was on my period, and I would wake up heart racing from being jolted by Satan, with sharp pains shooting through my abdomen and lower back and my arms. My arms used to feel like that they weighed 50 pounds each when I was on my period. And on those mornings, I would have to sit down repeatedly while I was trying to get ready because I felt like I'd faint if I continued to stand. And by the time I made the morning commute to work, I felt like I'd been in a boxing ring with Mike Tyson. Then I'd get to work and just get treated like shit. So everything in me screamed, Paula, this is not where you belong. You deserve better. You don't belong here. And even though my intuition articulated that fact perfectly, I ignored it because two subconscious beliefs were controlling my behaviors. I felt guilty for thinking I was better than my job because I worked with some of the most wonderful people in the world. They were great. And I thought, well, I'm not better than these people. These people are wonderful. So I stayed and became more resentful and exhausted with each day until that resentment and exhaustion manifested into weight gain, high blood pressure, binge drinking, criticism, complaining, financial issues, low self-esteem, poor confidence. I didn't look good. I didn't feel good. I just was not on my A game at all. And the next subconscious belief was thinking I couldn't survive financially without that employer. I never worried about losing my job like my mom used to, but I thought I should bow down and kiss feet for having it. My employer was and still is a world-renowned, prestigious institution of education, and they only hire the best and the brightest. And I felt like those people who sat on high and looked down low were smarter and more important than me. So I sacrificed my time to make their dreams come true because I was raised to believe that's what I had to do. You know, my dreams didn't didn't really count because they weren't going to come true. And people would say things to me like, girl, you better thank your lucky stars for landing that job. If you ever quit that job, you'll be shooting yourself in the foot. Just do what they tell you to do, and you can stay there for the rest of your life. Ugh. I would hear people, say those things, and right down in the depths of my soul, I knew they were wrong. But I accepted those opinions as facts without much questioning, really. Then one day, I started asking myself questions and realized something. Some of us are not meant to be fenced in, and I am one of those people. I knew I could create a better situation for myself, but I continued to conform because of those two subconscious beliefs, and it got me nowhere. I didn't look the way I wanted to look. I didn't feel the way I wanted to feel. I didn't have the life I wanted to have. Now, what kind of existence is that? Do you really think that is what God intended for us? The answer is no. Reversing these disempowering subconscious beliefs can be easier said than done, but it can be done. If I can do it, you can do it. And I know that about you because all of us have the same power and capability to get what we want. The only difference between me and someone living a life that isn't worth living is that I decided that I deserved better, and I went after it unapologetically, without any guilt. There are two types of people in this world. Those who feel deserving of wealth and those who don't. Whatever they believe they deserve is what shapes their physical reality. That is not a subjective opinion. That's a damn fact. So examine your life through the lens of being a snob and see new objective beliefs. Look at the facts. That's all you have to do. If you're anything like I was 20 years ago, the last thing you want to do is air your dirty laundry and bare your soul to some stranger in a white coat. Now, please allow me to explain what I'm talking about here. If you feel like you need help from a medical professional, then seek help without delay. However, if your problems can be traced to fears that were instilled in you before your brain was fully developed, my book is all you need. I have read so many self-help books and loved pretty much all of them, but many of those books were a little boring and contained concepts that were difficult to grasp. And in the beginning of my spiritual transformation and personal growth evolution, I wasn't as emotionally intelligent as I am now. So I felt intimidated by some of the material. And that intimidation slowed down my personal development because it created a learning curve. When the material intimidated me, I lost motivation to learn, so I would backpedal and fall off the self-empowerment wagon. So I kept my challenges in mind when I wrote Thought Snob, and I removed every barrier one could possibly have to successfully integrating self-empowerment concepts and practices into their daily life. I simplified the most complex concepts and broke them down so that anyone could comprehend them and use them immediately without a frustrating learning curve. Another characteristic that makes my book stand out from the rest is it's entertaining. With each lesson, and there are 7 by the way, I include relevant, relatable personal stories that help you connect the dots with things that are happening in your life. You'll laugh, probably cry, and you'll experience a smorgasbord of emotions. You'll question yourself. You'll question the people you associate with. You'll learn so many things about yourself, and the book is designed to evoke the most significant eureka moment you have ever had. And I don't waste any time. I can't stress that enough. You're already reversing disempowering subconscious beliefs before you're even finished reading the first chapter. My promise to you is this. Each chapter teaches a new behavior to adopt. So, you end up with 7 new behaviors that are linked to specific practices. If you integrate the practices into your daily life, you'll experience some improvement after 1 month. If you continue to integrate the practices for 1 year, your life won't look the same in 1 year. And the people who treated you poorly will wish they hadn't. Plus, I also want you to know this. Anyone who purchases my book gets access to my Manifestation Challenges group, which is a private Facebook page. Now, in this group, you have instant access to like-minded, supportive people who want to see you succeed. Now, I decided to give my customers access to this group so that they would have an additional support system to the book. Now, up until now, this group was restricted to people who paid for a manifestation challenge. I have 2 of those, by the way, a 30-day and a 7-day challenge, and you can learn all about those on my website at paulaswope.com. So when you join our private group, you don't get free access to the challenges, but you get access to a solid support group. And many of the members who have completed one or both of the challenges act as mentors to our newcomers. So that's another great benefit. So I want to close out this episode by reading an excerpt from my book, Thought Snob. Say the title again. I've said it 1,000 times, I think. Thought Snob, the modern spiritual playbook for a better life. And the excerpt I chose is from chapter 1 because it gives you a look into the way my book takes you on a journey of self-exploration. The way it's written encourages you to journal as you read. The excerpt I chose to read to you guys today is on page 17, a mini prelude to your snobby awakening. Before we get started, I want you to do something. Full disclosure, it may not be pleasant, but hang in there with me. I want you to revisit a time when someone made you feel worthless. Get a clear mental image of that experience. Have you got it? Good. Consider all aspects of the experience. How old were you? Who was involved? Where were you? How did you feel about it at that time? Are there other details? Do you think about this experience often? What was the outcome of the experience? Where are the people now that were involved? What emotions do you now attach to the experience? When you feel confident that you've worked through every detail, close your eyes and let the past experience unfold in your mind's eye. You don't need to spend more than a few minutes on this. The point of having you revisit an unpleasant experience is for one reason only: to reclaim your power in the present. Once you have fully taken in the past experience, I want you to say aloud, I was better than that. Now, let's flash forward to the present. What situation are you in right now that makes you feel the same as you did in the experience you just revisited? Think through every piece of it just like you did before. What is the emotion associated with the experience? Who is involved? How often are you in this situation? Do you think about this situation often? Where are you? How much do you talk about this situation? Are there other details? Once you have fully taken in every aspect of your present situation, I want you to say aloud, I am better than that. Say it again. Those 5 words tell the universe who you are and what you expect to receive. Claiming your power is an action that the universe always rewards. Say it again. Each time you say, I am better than that, you chip away at the power of that boss who treats you poorly. You chip away at that passive-aggressive friend's power. You chip away at that abusive partner's power. Whatever your situation may be, the moment you decide you are better than what you've settled for is when the universe starts conspiring in your favor. I want you to use the space below to write down your new motto. I am better than that. From this day forward, you will live and die by this motto. Have it embroidered on your clothes. Put it on your drinking glasses and coffee mugs. Plaster it all over your house. Let the universe know you will not settle for anything less than what you want. You've settled long enough. Stop the madness. Break the karmic patterns. To invent a new world, you must be willing to discard sources of misery. You're already ahead of the game if you're willing to do that. With that one simple exercise I just read to you from the book, you start releasing negative emotions, reversing subconscious beliefs, and training your brain to migrate away from the negativity bias that I talked about earlier. Plus, your words have tremendous power, and you can absolutely speak things into existence. And by saying, I am better than that, you tell your subconscious a new story and claim your power. So my book is available for purchase on Amazon, and it's linked to this episode. Thought Snob, the Modern Spiritual Playbook for a Better Life, is available in 3 formats: paperback, ebook, and audiobook. Now let me tell you about a nice feature the audiobook has. Alana Nash edited my book. And if you don't know who Alana is, she's one of the most famous authors in the world. She has written several books about Elvis Presley, and most of you know that I am a huge Elvis Presley fan. And Alana is my favorite author, so being able to say that she's my editor is it's surreal. So several months ago, when Alana was working on she was working her magic on my manuscript, she was disappointed because she couldn't fit all of my personal stories into the manuscript. And she said, Paula, these stories are so good. People will remember these stories. How about we include them in the audiobook and include them as bonus stories? And I loved her idea. So when you buy the audiobook, you get access to 6 bonus stories that we couldn't fit into the manuscript. And when you buy the book, make sure you send a request to join Paula Swope's Manifestation Challenges community on Facebook. And let me know you purchased the book, and I'll approve your request as soon as possible. So that's all I've got. It was a lot. I know that. Thank you for listening today. I appreciate all of you. And as you go about your day, anything that gets in your way that remotely resembles disempowerment, slice it with your tongue and say, I am better than that.
The Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope has been brought to you by Thought Snob Media in association with Special Purpose Studios. All production, mixing, and sound engineering by me, Will Swope. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Please take a few seconds to give us 5 stars and leave a review. See you on the next Thought Snob podcast with Paula Swope.